She hid under a table to escape her abusive husband and found an alpha king instead. The hall was alive with laughter and the clinking of fine china, but beneath the polished floors, Alara's heart was pounding like a war drum. She pressed herself flat against the cold, hard wood, hiding under the long, heavy table. The silk tablecloth brushed against her cheek, and she tried to steady her breathing. Every shadow seemed to move, every footstep above her echoing like the footsteps of doom. Lord Varin, her husband, was pacing, his voice sharp and cruel, slicing through the room like a blade. Alara could not see him clearly, only hear the harsh edges of his anger. She had grown used to fear in his presence, but tonight was different. Tonight, the fear was a living thing, crawling over her skin and settling in her chest. She had always known she could not stay here, in this gilded cage of golden halls and whispered threats. For years she had endured the sharp edges of his temper, the quiet cruelty that left invisible scars. But something in her stirred now, a quiet fire, small yet persistent, telling her she could not remain trapped any longer. The guests above her laughed again, oblivious to the terror lurking just below. The chandeliers swayed gently, throwing fractured light across the marble floors. Alara's hand grazed the rough wood beneath her, her fingers trembling. She had hidden under tables before, in kitchens and halls during her husband's anger, but never like this. Never with the weight of life or death pressing so heavily upon her. Her mind raced. Escape was impossible. The front doors were guarded and the servants were loyal to Varin's cruelty. But then she heard it, a subtle noise, soft and deliberate, that did not belong to the banquet hall above. It was a footstep, careful yet commanding, coming down the side corridor toward the hidden doors beneath the floor. Alara's breath caught. The sound was different from the usual shuffle of the servants. It was stronger, heavier, yet measured. There was a presence in the hall now that did not belong to the life she had known. Her eyes darted in the shadows, straining to see past the tablecloth. From the darkness emerged a man. He moved with a quiet authority, every step deliberate, every motion precise. His cloak brushed the floor, black as night, and his eyes, when they met hers, seemed to pierce the gloom as if he could see not just her body but her very soul. He was a king, or something far older, far more dangerous than any king she had ever heard of in the stories whispered at night. "Alara," he said softly, his voice carrying a weight that made her heart both seize and flutter. She froze. How did he know her name? How could a man she had never seen before call her by name with such certainty? The fear that had lodged itself in her chest loosened just enough to allow curiosity to creep in. She wanted to move, to speak, to demand who he was and why he knew her name, but the terror of being found by Varin held her frozen beneath the table. He knelt slightly, lowering his face closer to the shadows where she hid. "Do not fear me," he said. There was no false softness in his tone. It was calm, commanding, certain. "I am here to offer you a choice." Alara's heart raced. A choice. What choice could exist for a woman trapped beneath a tyrant's roof, hiding from a husband whose wrath could turn deadly in a heartbeat? Varin's voice rose above them again, angry, demanding, cruel. The sound was a storm rolling across the marble, and Alara pressed her hands against her ears, wishing she could disappear entirely. But the man in the shadow did not flinch. He stood, and the light caught the hard lines of his face, the sharpness of his jaw, the darkness in his eyes that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge, of battle, of pain. "Alara," he repeated, and the name was no longer a whisper but a command. "You do not belong here." The words struck her like lightning. Not belong, not here. Every fiber of her being screamed agreement. She did not belong here in this hall, in this life of fear and control. Yet the fear of leaving, of stepping out into the unknown, clawed at her chest. "You must choose," he said again. "You may remain hidden and risk your life under his shadow, or you may follow me and find a path that is yours, not his." Alara's mind spun. Who was he? Why would a stranger offer her freedom? And why did her heart pound with something that was not fear, something unfamiliar, dangerous, and thrilling? From somewhere above, Varen's voice cut sharply. "Ilara, where are you?" The command was like fire across her skin. She could not stay. The man in the shadows, King Kalen, did not move in haste. He waited, his presence steady, magnetic, almost impossible to ignore. "You must decide quickly," he said. "Every second you remain here, you risk everything. Follow me." And then the impossible happened. The floor beneath the table shifted in a way that revealed a narrow opening, hidden under the heavy carpet. It was a passage, dark and foreboding, leading down into what seemed like the heart of the castle itself. "Ilara," Kalen urged, extending his hand, strong and steady. "Step into the shadows with me. Step into the life you were meant to live." Her hands shook, but she took it. The moment her fingers brushed his, a strange warmth spread through her, a reassurance that seemed to whisper that she could survive this. With a final glance at the glittering hall above, she pulled herself out from under the table, and together they disappeared into the darkness. The corridor beneath the castle was narrow and winding, lit by torches that cast flickering shadows on the stone walls. Alara's pulse raced, not just from fear, but from the sheer exhilaration of moving toward freedom. She dared a glance at Kalen. His face was calm, unreadable, but she could sense the tension coiled within him, the same danger that had called to her from the shadows. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he led her down the corridor with careful steps, each one echoing softly in the hollow stone passage. "Because you are not meant to be caged," he finally said. "And because the one who trapped you is no ordinary man. He has made choices that put both of you in danger. I cannot allow that to continue." Alara felt a chill. Her husband's cruelty had always seemed personal, but now she realized it was part of something larger, something dark and dangerous that stretched beyond the walls of their home. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "A king? A warrior? Some sorcerer?" He allowed a small smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "I am someone who cannot ignore injustice. Call me what you will. But know this, your life from this moment on belongs to you, not him, not anyone else." They reached a small chamber hidden beneath the castle, filled with strange symbols etched into the stone, candles flickering with an unnatural light. Alara paused at the threshold, unsure if she was stepping into safety or into deeper danger. Kalen turned to her, his gaze piercing. "It will not be easy," he said. "The path ahead is filled with shadows and trials, but it is the only path to freedom. Do you have the courage to walk it?" Alara swallowed hard, fear and hope warring within her. For the first time in years, she felt something stir, a sense of possibility, fragile but real. She nodded slowly. I will try." Kalen's expression softened ever so slightly, and for the first time she saw a flicker of humanity behind the commanding mask. "Good. Then let us move before it is too late." As they descended further into the hidden corridors, the sounds of the banquet hall above faded, replaced by the steady drip of water and the echo of their footsteps. Alara realized that each step away from the light above was a step toward something unknown, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. She did not know what lay ahead: dark forces, ancient curses, powers she could not yet imagine. But she knew one thing clearly: she had chosen her own life, and she would never return to the shadow of her husband again. Yet even as hope stirred, a question lingered in her mind, heavy and insistent. Who was this man who knew her name? And why did it feel as though he had been waiting for her all along? The corridors twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the heart of the castle's secrets. Torches flared as they passed, shadows dancing along the walls like silent watchers. Alara's fingers brushed the stone, grounding herself, reminding herself she was real, alive, and free. And then, just as they turned a final corner, a figure emerged from the darkness ahead, a creature of shadow, its eyes gleaming with unnatural light, blocking their path. Kalen's hand went to the hilt of his sword, his stance commanding. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried the weight of warning. Alara's heart thundered. She had escaped one danger only to step into another, and the night was only beginning. She swallowed her fear, gripping the edge of her cloak, and whispered to herself, "I am not afraid. I am not afraid." The shadow hissed, advancing slowly, and Kalen stepped forward to meet it, his presence like fire against the darkness. Alara's eyes widened as she realized. She had hidden under a table to escape her husband, and found something far greater, far more terrifying, and far more powerful. And in the depths of that shadowed corridor, she could not yet know that her life would never be the same again. The shadowed creature froze as Kalen advanced, his presence cutting through the darkness like a blade of light. Alara pressed herself against the cold stone wall, heart pounding, watching him move with a control and confidence she had never seen before. Every step he took seemed deliberate, measured, like a man who had faced danger countless times and bent it to his will. The creature hissed, a low, reverberating sound that made the air itself seem to tremble. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, fixed on Kalen. He drew a sword, black as night, and the steel seemed to drink the torchlight around them, swallowing the shadows into its edge. "Alara," he said softly, without taking his eyes off the creature. "Step back, watch, but do not interfere." Her chest heaved. She wanted to scream, to run, to do something, anything, but she obeyed. Fear tangled with fascination as she watched him. There was something in his movements, the precision, the quiet authority that made the shadows around them seem smaller, weaker, less certain. With a swift motion, Kalen struck. The creature recoiled, hissing, retreating into the darker corners of the corridor. But it was not defeated. Its gaze remained fixed on them like it was waiting, watching, calculating. Kalen's eyes met hers, calm and commanding. "It will not leave us," he said, voice low. "But we will not wait for it. Move quickly." Alara swallowed hard, following him as he led her deeper into the maze of hidden passages beneath the castle. The air grew cooler, heavy with damp stone and the faint scent of something ancient, something long forgotten. Her mind raced. Every step she took felt like stepping into another world, one that was dangerous, yet strangely alive with possibility. Who are you?" she asked again, her voice trembling. "Are you a king, a warrior, some kind of magic user?" Kalen allowed a faint smile, though his eyes remained dark and unreadable. "I am a king, yes," he said, "but not in the way you might think. My kingdom is hidden, shadowed, feared, and not all who rule it are alive in the usual sense of the word." Alara shivered, not from cold but from the weight of his words. She had known kings were powerful, commanding, but she had never imagined one who moved like a shadow, who seemed to carry centuries in his gaze. Why help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why risk yourself?" He glanced at her briefly, and for a moment the armor of authority seemed to crack, revealing something deeper, more human. "Because you are not meant to be trapped," he said, "and because the man you fear has made choices that endanger more than just you." "I cannot ignore that." The words settled over her like a promise. A strange warmth began to spread through her, a flicker of hope she had long thought extinguished. She dared to take a small step closer, feeling the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. They turned a corner, and the passage opened into a small chamber, unlike any part of the castle she had seen. Candles flickered in carved holders along the walls, casting shadows that danced like living spirits. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, faintly glowing with a soft blue light. The air thrummed with energy, a subtle pulse that seemed to resonate with her own heartbeat. "This place," she whispered, awe threading her voice. "What is this?" Kalen stepped forward, running a hand along the carvings, his expression unreadable. "This is the heart of the castle's secret," he said. "A place few know exists. Here, we are safe from prying eyes, from danger above." She glanced around, feeling the weight of history pressing against the walls. It was beautiful, terrifying and strange all at once, and she realized with a small, sudden clarity that she had never been truly safe in her life until this moment. Kaelin's gaze met hers. "I need to know," he said quietly, "if you are willing to trust me. There is a path forward, but it will not be easy. Your husband has made a dark pact, one that will bring more danger if it is not broken." Alara felt a chill run down her spine. She had suspected her husband was cruel, ambitious, even dangerous, but a pact? With what? And how could she possibly confront it? I don't know if I can," she admitted, her voice shaking. I've never done anything like this before." Kaelin took a step closer, his presence overwhelming, commanding, yet strangely comforting. "You can," he said. "More than you know, but you cannot do it alone. You will need me. And I need you." The weight of his words struck her in a way she did not expect. She had spent years feeling powerless, trapped, unseen. And here was a man, a king, telling her that not only could she act, but that her actions mattered, that she mattered. "Why me?" she asked softly. "Why not someone else? Why not anyone else?" Kaelin's expression darkened slightly, the shadow returning to his eyes. "Because you are strong," he said. "Stronger than you realize, and because you have survived him. That alone sets you apart." Alara felt a flicker of pride mixed with fear. To survive him had been her only goal for years, but now she realized it had made her something more, something capable of stepping into danger, of shaping her own destiny. Kaelin gestured to the symbols on the walls. "These markings, they hold power. We will need them to undo the pact, to protect you, and to ensure that he cannot harm anyone else, but it will require courage and trust." She swallowed hard, nodding. I will try." "Good," he said, and for the first time she noticed a faint softness behind his commanding eyes. "Then we begin." For hours he guided her through the chamber, explaining the history of the castle, the nature of her husband's dark pact, and the strange powers that had been woven into the very walls around them. Alara listened, absorbing the words, feeling both awe and fear. The world she had known, golden halls, strict rules, a life dictated by another's cruelty, was only a shadow of the larger, stranger reality that Kaelin revealed. As the night deepened, Kaelin led her to a narrow passageway that descended even further, the air growing cooler, heavier, tinged with magic she could feel but not understand. The creature from earlier had not followed them, yet she could sense its presence somewhere beyond the shadows, watching, waiting. "You will need to be careful," Kaelin said, his hand brushing hers briefly as he guided her forward. The touch was light, almost accidental, yet it sent a thrill through her that she could not ignore. "This path is not just dangerous, it is a test, for both of us." Alara nodded, her fear mingling with excitement. For the first time she felt a sense of purpose, a spark that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with living, truly living. The passage opened into a wide chamber, lit by a single, massive crystal that hung suspended in the center. Its light pulsed faintly, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Kaelin moved to the crystal, placing his hands upon it. A low hum filled the room, vibrating through her chest, awakening something deep within her. "This crystal," he said, eyes never leaving hers, "is the heart of the magic in this place. It will help us, guide us, and protect us, but it will also reveal the truths that you may not be ready to face." Alara felt a shiver run through her. Truths? What truths? And was she ready to face them? Kaelin's gaze softened, a rare break in his stern demeanor. "Whatever happens, know this: you are not alone. Not now, not ever again. Trust in yourself and in me." Her chest swelled with a strange mixture of fear, hope, and something else, something like trust, fragile but real. She nodded, stepping closer to the crystal, letting its light wash over her. And in that moment, as the hum of magic filled the chamber, she realized that her life had changed irrevocably. She had escaped her husband, yes, but she had also stepped into a world of shadows, secrets, and power beyond her imagination. She did not know what lay ahead. She did not know if she was ready, but for the first time in her life she felt alive. A sudden noise echoed through the chamber, a soft, deliberate step, not her own. Elara turned, heart hammering, and saw the faintest flicker of movement in the shadows beyond the crystal. Kalen's hand went to the hilt of his sword, his stance immediately commanding. "It begins," he said softly, "and we must be ready." Elara took a deep breath, gripping the edge of the crystal for courage. She had hidden under a table to escape her husband, and now she was on a path she could not have imagined, guided by a king she did not yet fully understand. The shadows around them stirred. The journey had only just begun. The crystal's faint glow lit the chamber, casting flickering shadows along the walls. Elara's fingers traced the carvings, absorbing the strange, pulsing energy. Kalen stood beside her, calm and commanding, yet she sensed a tension within him, a restraint, a secret he kept even from her. The air was thick with possibility, danger, and magic, and Elara felt it pressing against her chest like a living thing. "Are you ready?" Kalen asked, his voice low, almost tender though still filled with authority. Elara swallowed hard. I think so." Her words were unsure, but her heart thumped with determination. She had survived Varan for years, she could survive this too. And perhaps in this strange new world beneath the castle, she could finally find herself. Kalen's eyes softened for a brief moment and she caught a hint of vulnerability. "Good. Then we move. But know this, what we face next will not just test your courage. It will test your heart." Elara's pulse quickened. Her heart, had she truly ever known what that meant, to act from strength, from purpose, from choice. She realized she had always been running, always hiding. But now, for the first time, she felt that flicker of freedom, a fire she could not ignore. They moved deeper into the hidden corridors. The torches along the walls flickered as if alive, and the shadows seemed to shift and twist, watching them. The air grew cooler, the pulse of magic stronger, filling her with a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. "Elara," Kalen said, halting briefly, "there is something you must know." His hand hovered near the crystal, fingers brushing its surface. "I carry a curse of my own. One that has kept me bound in ways similar to your own struggles." Elara blinked. "A curse, but you are a king. How can a king be cursed?" Kalen's expression darkened, the vulnerability deepening. "Power does not make one free. Sometimes it magnifies the chains we cannot see. My curse has made it impossible for me to love freely, to trust fully. It has kept me distant, commanding, feared, and until it is lifted, my heart cannot find peace." The words struck her with an unexpected force. She had thought she was the only one trapped, the only one bound by fear and shadow. Yet here was a man, powerful, commanding, seemingly untouchable, who bore chains as heavy as her own. "You're human too," she whispered, awe-threading her voice. Kalen's gaze softened, a rare flicker of warmth in the depths of his dark eyes. "Yes," he said quietly, "human, flawed, burdened, and yet capable of change, capable of redemption." Elara felt a strange connection. Perhaps it was the recognition of shared pain, or the knowledge that they had both endured what others could not imagine. Her fear did not vanish, but it began to mingle with trust, tentative and fragile. They continued through the corridors until they reached a chamber filled with the scent of damp earth and ancient stone. Strange markings glowed faintly along the walls, pulsing in rhythm with the faint hum of magic in the air. The room seemed alive, as though it had been waiting for them. "This is the heart of the castle's old magic," Kalen said. "It will help us break your husband's pact, but it will also reveal truths you may not be ready to face. You must be strong, Elara." Elara nodded, gripping the edge of the wall for support. "I will be. I have to be." Her words were a promise, a vow to herself more than to him. Kalen approached a stone pedestal in the center of the room, placing his hands upon it. The carvings flared with light, casting shadows that danced like living spirits. The air hummed with power, and Elara felt it ripple through her, awakening something she had long forgotten: strength, courage, and a quiet defiance. "Place your hands here," Kaelin instructed, guiding her. Hesitant, she obeyed. The moment her fingers touched the stone, a surge of warmth flowed through her. It was as if the chamber itself recognized her, acknowledged her presence, and offered its strength. "Elara," Kaelin said softly, "you are stronger than you know, but strength alone will not break the curse. You must face your fears, confront your past, and embrace your own power." Her breath caught. Her past, the years of fear, of hiding, of surviving Varen's cruelty, was a shadow she had carried everywhere. And yet here, in the presence of this king, this man who bore his own chains, she felt the possibility of release. What if I fail?" she asked quietly, doubt creeping into her voice. Kaelin's eyes met hers, unwavering. "Then I will not let you. We face this together." His hand brushed hers briefly, a simple touch, yet it carried a weight of reassurance that made her pulse quicken. The hum of magic in the room grew louder, resonating with her heartbeat. The shadows shifted, forming shapes that seemed almost alive, whispering secrets of the past, of choices made, of consequences yet to come. Elara felt a shiver run through her. She was standing at the edge of something vast, something she could not fully understand, but she could step forward or retreat, and she knew retreat was no longer an option. Kaelin moved to stand beside her, placing his hand lightly on the small of her back. "Are you ready?" he asked. She nodded, drawing in a deep breath. "Yes, I'm ready." Together they began the ritual. Light flared from the carvings on the walls, swirling around them, pulsing with energy. Elara felt it seep into her bones, into her very soul. The chamber seemed to stretch, to expand, to awaken with the force of their combined presence. Suddenly, a shadow moved at the edge of the room. Elara froze, heart hammering. Kaelin's hand went to his sword, his stance commanding, protective. The shadow was small, yet it radiated malice, the echoes of Varen's dark pact. It hissed, a low, reverberating sound that made the hair on her arms stand. "Stay close to me," Kaelin instructed. "Do not let fear control you. Use the power within you." Elara felt the warmth of the crystal pulse beneath her hands, steadying her. She had survived fear before. She could do it again. Closing her eyes for a moment, she reached inward, drawing upon the courage and resilience that had carried her this far. When she opened her eyes, the shadow recoiled, as if sensing her resolve. Kaelin moved with swift precision, sword cutting through the darkness, dispelling the malevolent presence. The room settled, light returning, the hum of magic steady and calm once more. Alara's chest heaved, her hands trembling, yet a spark of pride burned within her. She had acted, she had faced fear, and she had survived. Kaelin's gaze softened as he looked at her. "You see," he said, "you are stronger than you imagine. And together we can face what comes next." For a moment, the tension between them eased, replaced by a fragile connection, an unspoken understanding. They were not merely allies in battle. They were two wounded souls finding strength in each other, finding trust, finding the beginnings of hope. Elara realized something profound. Her past, her fear, her pain, they did not define her. She could reclaim her life. She could embrace her own power, and perhaps in time she could find a love not born of fear, but of respect, trust, and mutual courage. Kaelin's hand brushed hers again, lighter this time, almost tender. "We will rest soon," he said softly. "But know this, danger is not yet over. Varen's pact reaches further than you imagine, and the path to freedom is far from complete." Elara nodded, determination settling like armor around her heart. "I understand. I am ready." He studied her for a long moment, and she sensed the weight of his thoughts, the burden of his own curse, and the care he felt for her. "Good," he said finally, "because the trial ahead will demand everything from both of us." A sudden rumble shook the chamber, and the walls seemed to breathe, the light of the crystal flickering wildly. Shadows gathered at the edges once more, and a low, menacing hiss echoed through the room. "Elara," Kaelin said, his voice calm but firm, "hold fast. The next trial begins." Her grip tightened on the stone, her heart racing, yet she felt a strange thrill. She was no longer the woman hiding beneath a table, cowering from a cruel husband. She was a survivor, a fighter, a woman reclaiming her life. And beside her stood a king, a man who was as bound by his own chains as she was by hers, who had chosen to trust her, to fight with her, and perhaps to let her see the man behind the power and command. The shadows advanced, twisting and writhing, the air alive with magic and threat. Alara drew in a deep breath, summoning courage she had never known she possessed. And as the darkness loomed, she realized with clarity she was ready, ready to face the past, ready to face the danger, ready to claim her life. And beside her, Kaelin's steady presence was a promise. Together, they would face whatever came next. The journey was far from over. But for the first time, Alara knew she was no longer alone. The path to the summit was treacherous, jagged stones cutting into their boots as they climbed. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of rain and the promise of storm. Alara pressed her cloak tightly around her, feeling the weight of what lay ahead, the confrontation with her husband, Lord Varin, and the dark pact that had haunted her life for so long. Kaelin led the way, his steps sure and unhesitating despite the uneven rocks. The king's presence was steady, commanding, yet Alara could sense the tension coiled beneath the surface. His curse had not yet been fully lifted, and the responsibility of guiding her safely through this ordeal weighed heavily on him. "Are you ready?" Kaelin asked, his voice low but firm. Alara paused, gripping a jagged stone for support. She had faced fear before, battled shadows both literal and in her heart, and survived. Yet the thought of confronting Varin, a man who had ruled her life with cruelty for years, made her pulse quicken. She nodded. "I am ready," she said, conviction sharpening her tone. The summit was visible now, a ruined castle perched atop the jagged mountain, its walls scarred by age and magic. Lightning forked across the darkened sky, illuminating the battlements in stark, ghostly flashes. Shadows clung to the crumbling stones as if the building itself had been infected by the darkness Varin had summoned. Kaelin's eyes darkened as he surveyed the castle. "This is where it ends," he said. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Alara drew a deep breath. The air was thin and cold, but the warmth of determination burned within her. "Together," she echoed, and for the first time she truly felt the power of that word. Not just survival, but unity, trust, and strength shared. They entered through a side gate, broken and warped by time. The interior was a ruin of stone and shadow, filled with the faint, eerie hum of residual magic. Alara's footsteps echoed, each one a reminder that there was no turning back. At the center of the throne room, Lord Varin awaited, his posture arrogant, his eyes glinting with malice. Dark energy seemed to swirl around him, the remnants of his pact visible in the air like smoke. "Alara," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Did you think you could escape me?" She stood tall, her fear tempered by the courage she had found in the chambers below, in the rituals with Kaelin, and in the knowledge of her own strength. "I am no longer yours," she said firmly. "Not in body, not in mind, not in spirit." Varin laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the ruined hall. "Foolish girl, you cannot defy me." Kaelin stepped forward, his presence imposing, his sword gleaming even in the storm-dark room. "You underestimated her," he said, voice steady, eyes locked on Varin. "And that is your mistake." The energy in the room shifted. Shadows stretched and twisted, drawn to Varin's dark power, yet Kaelin and Alara's combined courage seemed to push against it. The crystal's magic from the hidden chamber still lingered in Alara, and she could feel it coursing through her veins, filling her with strength. Varin's eyes narrowed. "You dare challenge me?" "Yes," Kaelin said simply, "and together we will end this." Alara felt the fear rising again, but she pushed it down, replacing it with determination. She knew now that survival was not enough. She had to fight, to reclaim her life, to break the chains that had bound her for so long. Varin unleashed a wave of dark energy, a swirling storm of shadows and malice. Kalen deflected it with a precise strike of his sword, the blade humming with a force that seemed to absorb the darkness. Alara took a deep breath, stepping forward. "Focus," Kalen instructed. "Your courage is stronger than his power. Channel it." Alara closed her eyes for a moment, drawing on every memory of pain, every scar, every fear she had endured. She felt it transform into resolve, a light within her that burned brighter than the shadows around them. When she opened her eyes, the energy in the room shifted. She extended her hands, letting the power within her flow, joining with Kalen's strength. Together, they formed a shield, a barrier that pushed back against Varin's darkness. Varin's scream of frustration echoed through the hall. "Impossible," he shouted. "You cannot defeat me." But defeat was not the goal. Alara realized then that power alone did not make a person strong. Strength came from courage, from trust, from the willingness to act even when fear threatened to paralyze. And she had that now. The shadows writhed and twisted, clawing at them, but Alara and Kalen's combined presence was stronger, brighter, more resolute. Slowly, deliberately, they advanced. Varin tried to strike again, but Kalen's sword moved with lethal precision, deflecting every attack. Alara, her hands glowing with the inner light of courage and magic, pushed forward, breaking through the shadows that clung to Varin. "You cannot control me," she shouted, her voice ringing through the chamber. "You will no longer rule over my life." The words seemed to weaken him, his dark energy flickering, faltering. Kalen stepped closer, his presence dominating yet calm. "It ends now, Varin," he said. For a moment the room was silent except for the storm raging outside. Then, with a final surge of energy, Kalen and Alara combined their strength, breaking the pact that had bound Varin's power. The shadows screamed and dissipated, swirling into nothingness. Varin fell to his knees, exhausted, powerless, the cruel fire in his eyes dimmed. Alara stood tall, her chest heaving, her hands trembling yet filled with triumph. She had reclaimed herself, faced her past, and survived. Kalen approached her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low, filled with admiration and something deeper, respect, care, and a hint of warmth that touched her heart. Alara turned to him, eyes wide. "We did it," she whispered. "Together," Kalen nodded. "Yes, together." The storm outside began to subside, lightning fading into the soft glow of dawn. The ruined castle, once a place of shadows and fear, seemed to breathe a quiet sigh, the magic settling into calm. Alara looked around the throne room, seeing it not as a place of terror but as a place of transformation. She had faced darkness and emerged stronger, freer, alive in a way she had never known. Kalen's gaze met hers, and for a long moment, silence spoke between them. No words were needed. They had survived, conquered, and found trust and strength in each other. "Your courage," Kalen said softly, "it is unmatched. And your heart," he paused, the storm of his own past visible in his eyes. "Your heart has brought light to places I thought were lost forever." Alara felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet recognition of her own worth. She had feared so much, had hidden for years, had doubted herself endlessly. And yet here she stood, alive, whole, and no longer bound by fear. Kalen extended his hand and she took it without hesitation. The gesture was simple, yet it carried all the weight of trust, partnership, and shared triumph. They stepped onto the highest terrace of the ruined castle, the first light of dawn illuminating the mountains around them. The wind was softer now, carrying the scent of rain-washed stone and fresh beginnings. Alara breathed deeply, letting the wind fill her lungs, letting the sunlight touch her face. For the first time in years, she felt truly free. Not just from her husband, not just from fear, but from the shadows that had ruled her life. Kalen stood beside her, silent but steady, a presence that was no longer intimidating but comforting, protective, and kind. She realized then that he had been more than a king, more than a guide. He had been a mirror, reflecting her own strength back to her, helping her see herself as she truly was. "Alara," Kalen said quietly, breaking the silence, "whatever comes next, know that this, what we've found together, cannot be taken away. You are no longer alone, and neither am I." She looked at him, eyes shining with gratitude and something deeper, something she had not expected but could not deny. "Together," she said, the word a promise, a declaration, and a beginning. The ruins around them, the shadows that had once threatened to swallow them, and the storm that had raged both outside and within, now seemed distant, fading into memory. What remained was strength, trust, and a quiet, resilient love that had grown in the crucible of fear and darkness. As dawn fully broke over the mountains, Alara realized that she had hidden under a table to escape her husband, and found far more than she could have imagined. She had found freedom, courage, and a partner who would stand beside her, not in dominance but in trust, respect, and shared strength. The journey was over, yet it was only the beginning. Together they would face the world, no longer bound by fear, no longer defined by the shadows of the past. They had reclaimed their lives, and in doing so had discovered something far more powerful: hope, trust, and the quiet, enduring force of love born from courage and redemption. And as the sun rose over the mountains, the ruined castle stood as a testament, not to fear, not to darkness, but to the strength of those who dared to rise above it together.